all of our body, pretty much, is capable of responding to electromagnetic energy, such as biophotons and the natural one sunlight. Then it's also capable of responding to the non-native EMFs that we're pumping out in ever increasing quantities now. So there's a priority there. We do need to tidy things up.
Welcome to the QBC podcast, where we explore exciting new paradigms that have a meaningful impact on our day-to-day lives. I'm your host, Meredith Oke. Let's keep the conversation going. Join us in our free community by visiting qbcpod.com. That's qbcpod.com. And let's see where the quantum superhighway takes us next. I know for many of us, the quantum biologic framework, that is the intersection of quantum physics and biology, holds the promise of potentially being able to give us scientific mechanisms of action for some of the biggest anomalies in consciousness and human experiences and phenomena that cannot be explained by the materialist paradigm. I'm talking about things like telepathy, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and also more common occurrences such as that feeling that you get when you know somebody is staring at you, even if you can't see them. What is that? My guest today has some answers, and had such a good time talking to him because he went on his own journey of shifting paradigms from being a medically trained physician, he's an MD, who did not believe, quote unquote, in any of that stuff. Even though he was deep into the integrative and functional health world, he has run journals and chaired professional associations for ecological medicine in the UK. And Dr. Damien Downing also wrote a book back in 1988 on the importance of sunlight and how we cannot be truly healthy if we do not get enough of it. He has continued his path after decades of clinical experience working with patients to resolve their issues as naturally as possible. He has gone down the physics rabbit hole and has now come out with a very, very different perspective than what he started with after deeply studying the intersection of physics and biology, most notably with structured water, light, and the work of May Wen Ho regarding what she calls time crystals. Turns out we're not just biochemical, we're not just bioelectrical, we're also bioinformational, potentially storing information in our time crystals across time and space. It's wild. It's wild, fun stuff. You are definitely going to enjoy this chat with Dr. Downing. We start out with light and structured water, and then we go down the rabbit hole that changed his paradigm and changed what he believes about how human consciousness works. So enjoy this episode. It is a very fun one. And Dr. Downing's book, Coherent Health, The Power of Light and Water, is coming out soon. We will link to it in the show notes, or you can look it up on Amazon. All right. Don't forget to visit our friends at bondcharge.com for all of your circadian biology product needs. And also, I really recommend downloading the My Circadian app. We actually talk about the My Circadian app in this interview. Dr. Downing mentions it as a tool that he came across listening to this podcast and finds it. He just said he found it like extremely helpful and really recommended. He now recommends that his patients use it. It's a way to make maintaining our circadian health just a little more easier, especially for people who are new to it, or if you're a practitioner working with clients, there is a way you can program their location and use it to support your ability to guide them on their circadian journey. Highly recommend. And for links to all of those things, do visit the Tools We Use page on qbcpod.com. That is also where I recommend the patches, which used your body's own biophotonic emissions to wake up your stem cells. The world is cool. There's so much cool stuff in it. All right, enjoy my interview with Dr. Downing. Dr. Damien Downing, welcome back to the QVC podcast.
Thank you very much.
We're going to have fun today. Okay, so let's start with, one of my favorite topics, sunlight. You have worked, as we say in the US, an integrative physician for decades and have been a longtime champion of sunlight through the whole sunlight is bad for you phase that we seem to be emerging from in our culture. From the get-go, you were a sunlight champion. You wrote a book about how important sunlight is in 1988, Daylight Robbery.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. We'll start there. Like, why is sunlight so crucial to human biology?
I think we've all been pretty stupid about this. How could it not be? I mean, it is the most fundamentalist, it's as necessary to us as water is to fish. More so. This is what we evolved in, the whole of life evolved in. And the only new thing here, all cultures have done this sort of thing, have used heat and light and measures like that. And probably used structured water as well when we get to that. But we managed to, for a long time, I just think we're better than that, didn't we? We know best. But now what we've done is we've figured out a little bit more of it so that it's a moment where, that's how it works. That's how it makes sense. And you can see there's huge amounts of our energy. I don't know how you quantify this. But obviously a lot of the energy we use, a lot of the incoming energy that we make ATP with and do energetic things in our cells comes from light rather than from food.
This is a huge piece for people.
Isn't it? Yeah, me too.
Say a little bit more about that, because we've been really, really trained to think that, food is everything, and less inclined to consider in what environment we are consuming that food and what the inputs into our biology are the whole rest of the time when we're not eating. So how is it that light is so key as compared to food? I mean, not that food, it doesn't matter, obviously. Please, people, use both hemispheres of your brain. Two things can be true at once, okay?
Yeah.
Food matters, but also light is giving us more input than we really realized.
Yes, absolutely. Start with light itself. The light, it's all light, really, reaching us on the surface of the earth. The energy that comes from the sun is only 40% of it is visible light, right? But the high energy end of the spectrum, there's another 10% of ultraviolet, UVA and UVB, and then it cuts off, it's filtered out by the atmosphere. Down the other end, from red, you go into near infrared, and actually that's a whole 50% of the energy reaching us is in the near infrared. In infrared, but it's mostly near infrared. Right. So this is also why green spaces are good for us, because the leaves and so forth of green things, well, they reflect green light, obviously, because they don't need it. They get their energy at other places in the spectrum. But they also reflect the near infrared very strongly. And this is presumably at least one of the reasons why forest bathing has any point. You can probably make it even better if you're barefoot in the grass, so you get your electrons that way too. If you shut your eyes in a green park or a wood or somewhere, you look and the colour you see with your eyes closed is red, right? Because it penetrates quite well. But the near infrared penetrates even better, so that in the eyes there'll be about 5 times as much near infrared going into your eyes with the eyelids closed as there is coloured light. And It's not only in the eyes, but it has particular penetration, which we miscalculated for a long time because, we put a pointy detector at it and say, oh, well, it's not penetrating here. It's going off in all sorts of directions. So it's not getting through. But that doesn't matter to a cell, because that's probably good for the cell, because it's getting it all diffused, getting it all the way around from all directions, better than getting, one like a laser beam.
So what we've learned is that the light that we cannot see is penetrating right into our body, and not in a linear way, but in a way that has a systemic effect, like it fills up our whole system.
Nicely put, yes.
And we've only just realized this, scientifically speaking. I mean,
yeah.
I think
that's right.
Our natural wisdom has known this since the evolution of man, or our ancestral beginnings, however you want to look at it. But yes, so science has only just recently recognized that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what does that mean? Does it, because we haven't known that, we haven't known about the importance of infrared and near infrared and all the other wavelengths, which we're going to talk about. But it seems to me we've constructed a way of living that is totally antithetical.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Health.
I mean, electricity is to blame for a lot of it, isn't it? It became possible for us to work indoors. To change the subject slightly, I've forgotten her name, but the lady who you had on recently with the My Circadian app.
Yes, Sarah Kleiner.
Right. That's got a beautiful little thing on the app that enables you to just do a lux meter, point your camera at the light somewhere and take a light reading. And you will find that in here, I've got one of Ken Cedar's lamps up there, but apart from that, it's going to be pretty core level, a couple of 200 lux, something like that. Whereas out there, it'll be a gloomy day, probably 4,000 or 5,000. Sunny day would be a load more. So we hugely deprived ourselves of light by moving indoors, and of course extended our sunny day into the night with the use of electric lights. And then it all got worse when we invented energy-saving bulbs.
Right.
Because the reason why one of these LED lights is energy-saving, and you can have a 5-watt bulb or whatever there that produces equivalent to 60 watts in the old method, is that it's not making all the heat. But that heat was, at least some of it, was near infrared, and it has special properties to it. So things got even worse there.
So we moved indoors, but we still had somewhat biologically friendly light bulbs. Then we changed the light bulbs to be basically toxic. After sunset, bright white LED lights are toxic. Is that fair to say? Not to mention the light from the screen.
Yes, quite. I think there's a bit of a principle there. We have to be a bit clear. You can make pretty much an absolute rule here that if it occurs in nature, then it can't really be harmful to us. Can't be bad for us, really. And so I think on that basis, it's not that blue light is intrinsically bad for us.
Mm-hmm.
What's really bad for us is blue light with the near infrared taken out.
Which is light bulbs and screens. Yeah. Okay.
And it's also, of course, it's what, I never know when they put that abbreviation, NN EMFs.
Non-native.
Non-native, thank you, okay.
Yeah, so those are the fake, like the ones coming out of, the ones you warn about in your book, basically.
Yeah, right. Well, I was by no means the first, John Ott did that back in the end of the 50s, really. He created the term malillumination, which has two sides to it. not enough sunlight, and too much what's it say, new to nature? Non-native.
Non-native EMFs. Yeah. So those are the way we use it is like the Wi-Fi signal and all of the man-made frequencies that we can't see, the non-visible man-made frequencies that we're not conceived of with biology in mind.
Precisely. Yeah.
Right. So talking about the benefits of sunlight, which is, I think, becoming widely known. And I've interviewed, at least one allopathic physician who has looked at this research and agreed that there are really an infinite number of benefits to exposing our biology to sunlight. But then it kind of stops because they don't quite have a way to explain the mechanism of how, because that's quantum. So you have that piece. We'll get to it. So, but first, let's just run through. You have this table in your new book, light wavelengths and their benefits in terms of talking about sunshine. So let's start. So there's UVC, which is only in space. So let's move down to UVB.
Yeah, right. So UVB you only get around solar noon, and it's a tiny amount of when the sun's highest in the sign, so it's got the shortest path through the atmosphere to reach you at solar noon. It's only about 0.5% of the total light energy. They're really small, and it's only about 1/20th of the UV energy reaching us, because most of it is in the UVA, which is longer wavelength and therefore slightly lesser energy, but there's a lot more of it. So it has useful effects, right?
Right. And the UVB benefits are the ones that we traditionally think about.
They are, yes.
Yeah.
Which is vitamin D and melanin as well.
Right. So that's where you make vitamin D and you get a tan.
Yeah, that's right.
And that would be, so if you live, depending where you live, you wouldn't always have access to that.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't.
Yeah. But it's interesting because there's all of these other wavelengths that do lots and lots of things as well. So I think that's like a key takeaway for people is like, even if we were open to the fact that the sun is good for us, we were like, oh, we just need it for vitamin D and getting a tan. And now we know getting a tan is really good for us. Not burning, just tanning. But even if we are in winter or whatever, and we're not getting that UVB, there's still all these other wavelengths that have incredible effects. Like
absolutely.
UVA.
Let's do UVA. Indeed. Yeah, right.
Okay, so what happens with UVA?
Well, alpha MSH happens. Or really, I should say POMC happens. Light hitting the non-visual photoreceptors in the eyes, and that's higher energy light, UVA and blue, sends a message to the main body clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and then the body clocks there. And that causes the pituitary to produce this stuff called pro-opiomelanocortin. There's a bit of a bundle word.
Okay, yeah. So for those of us who are like, wait, I don't know what any of that is. What's it? What does it do? Right. Why do we care?
Okay. We'll call it POMC for short anyway.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
And the pro means it's not actually a thing on it in itself. It has to be changed, has to be converted or activated. And what happens is a number of steps, breaks it down into 3 other things, right? The opio is endorphins, which are kind of the feel-good internal hormones there. They're painkillers and relaxants and so forth. The melano is alpha MSH, which we'll come to in a second. And the cortin is ACTH, which is the adrenal stimulating hormone that causes your body to produce a burst of cortisol. If you do cortisol, there's supposed to be a spike of cortisol in the morning there.
Right.
And that comes from the effect of high energy light, UVA in particular, hitting the eyes. But also what we now realize is you get the same effect with that stuff hitting the skin. And there are the cells lining the capillaries in the skin. They produce PLMC and therefore all the other stuff here as well. So the final one is alpha MSH, which is, I don't know if you know the work of Richie Shoemaker in the States, who talks about the biotoxin pathway. He described this sort of stuff very well. And he regards alpha MSH as being the main off switch for inflammation and pain and so forth, you know. Okay. And so what it does is it does have a definite anti-inflammatory effect. It also causes the melanocytes, it stimulates the melanocytes to produce melanin, which we thought was his main purpose, but we clearly got that wrong, because it does have an anti-inflammatory effect, and so does the cortisol that you produce then. And the alpha MSH also has an antimicrobial effect in its own right. So it's making the whole system, you know, that much more efficient. You're not producing unproductive inflammation that's, you know, burning up your energy and wasting it on something that isn't working. So the thing that we've also come to realize now is that it's an appetite suppressant.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, a couple of people have said, you know, talked about this. Oh, so that's why I never have a great appetite when I'm on holiday.
Yeah, it's true. I noticed that the more time I spend outside and in the summer, I'm just, not as hungry.
Yeah, because there's it's doing a double effect there. It reduces your appetite by making you feel fuller. And it also makes your energy production more effective. It's very tempting to say, oh, hey, it's nature's Ozempic or whatever. But we don't know yet just, you know, whether you can do it that way around. Don't know. Can you fix your huge weight problem by getting lots of sunlight and so on? Will the weight just fall off you? Don't know. There are some people that say they have had that experience. There's some practitioners who say they have had that experience, but there certainly isn't a double-blind trial or anything like that.
Right.
What I think is certain is it's a good idea to get the sunlight first and the alpha MSH, then you'll keep your weight down in the first place.
So going outside, even if there's no UVB, you've just described, is anti-inflammatory, supports our immune system, suppresses our appetite, helps our body to make more energy. I mean, that sounds this sounds like all of the things that we're always trying to, you know, look for in a supplement or a prescription. And there it is, just
there it is,
coming at us the moment we step outside. I just think it's helpful to break this down because it's so simple. And I find sometimes people brush it off, or they're like, okay, Meredith, whatever, like, does it really make that big of a difference? As you said earlier, yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the visible light. So that's all the colors. There's blue, violet, green, yellow, amber, orange, red. What's going on with this light? And this is also available all day. The UVA comes up about an hour after sunrise.
Yeah, that's right. There's a whole bunch of things going on, some of which we're only really figuring out bit by bit, and from actually treating people with that. I mean, for instance, green light has been used to treat fibromyalgia. Who the heck thought that would happen? And that was generally green light without the near infrared or whatever, you know. So it does have a property on its own. And we can use, in photobiomodulation, we use blue light, particularly for stimulation on the immune system, and red lights, interestingly, on the circulation as well. So they all have benefits. We know that light's good for all depression, not just seasonal affective disorder, but all depression and so forth. I don't think anybody's identified a particular wavelength that works there, and it's probably all of them. I mean, it could be the alpha MSH effect from UVA just being anti-inflammatory, because I mean, all the neurologists and everybody these days say depression is inflammation, is neuroinflammation. So it could just be as simple as that. It could be other things. It's probably, it would be sensible to say you need the whole darn lot, really.
Yes, the full spectrum sunlight is.
Yeah. So what's nutrient number one that we're all lacking? Sunlight.
Is the ideal. And maybe when we're dealing with these chronic conditions from fibromyalgia to depression, full spectrum sunlight would be a good place to start, and then see what else is needed. It would be like a very simple, reasonable recommendation from you as a physician of many decades with lots of experience.
Yeah, I mean, I've always, when dealing with a complex problem, you try and, with a patient, you try and evaluate all the sides. You write a short overview. It goes nutrition, toxins, or things like that, genomic stuff, metabolic consequences, and so forth. But then you say to the patient, well, look, I think we ought to start with these obvious deficiencies here that you've got, because that's the only way to get your body working on our side.
Right.
And then when that's there, when the detox is working, everything's working that bit better, then you can get the toxins out and so forth and have less adverse consequences of it. But what we've now got to say is practically everybody's vitamin D deficient, for a start, certainly in this country. But is vitamin D just there because its own importance, and it does have huge importance to the immune system and so forth, but it's also quite a useful marker for the whole of light. If you're not getting enough light to do vitamin D for yourself, then you're probably, almost certainly, not getting enough light for all these other effects.
So vitamin D is a marker for potentially how much sunlight you're getting, and we are all most likely sunlight deficient. And if we're showing symptoms really of anything, going outside is a nice easy place to start.
Yeah, that's nicely put.
We did talk about near infrared, but that is sunrise to sunset, green spaces, fires, and true incandescent, certain specialized light bulbs or light therapies. You can get near infrared light. And what's happening with near infrared light? Why is this our friend? And why is being near infrared deficient like such a problem?
Right. Okay. This is where we go quantum.
Okay. Let's go.
The near infrared penetrates very well, so that it's been proposed that in an adult, 70% of your cells can access some near infrared, right? And probably in a child, 100%. And there's a couple of places in the body that there are fluids. That's the amniotic fluid in a pregnant womb, uterus, and the cerebrospinal fluid in the brain. They're actually rather good conductors. So they channel this near infrared in particular further deeper into the body. And there's a particular wavelength there at around 8-10 nanometers. I'm slightly vague, even though it's quantum, because I think there's more than one effect going on there. But this stuff has a quantum effect on the mitochondria. And it has been suggested that, well, one school of thought is that it has an effect on complex 4 of the electron transport chain, the mechanism that produces ATP, our main energy molecule. And it may well be that that's true, but it's looking more likely that it's also got an effect on structured water and the production of structured water, which is also something that just enables life, really.
That's a perfect description of structured water. It enables life.
Yeah.
And the infrared light, the near infrared light and the infrared light are helping us to have more structured water.
I mean, to varying extents, all light will do it. Certainly from ultraviolet through to infrared, and even further than near infrared, right into the mid-infrared, But near infrared has the best penetration.
So, and would that be why red light therapy has proven so effective in helping people feel better and recover? Is that what's going on there?
Because the effect is so, there's only the structured water effect is so fundamental. I think that's why it just kind of works for everything. So I've seen instantaneous effects sometimes. A colleague who just put one of the light pad thing on her frozen shoulder, and it was fixed after half an hour of that.
Wow.
And somebody else fixed their tinnitus immediately, and so forth. But I think that only happens if there's something there that really needs fixing. And the fix is to get the structured water and the electron transport chain working again. Then that provides the cell with energy to do whatever it is it wants to do.
And that's the fun surprise is
Yeah.
It's like, what does my body want to do if I give it what it needs? What's going to happen? What fun things are going to happen? Well, I guess we'll find out. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about structured water and how would you explain it, to a layperson. We've got some foundation. This audience has some foundation in it, but to varying degrees. Yeah. So talk to me about our second favorite topic, structured water.
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things about it is that actually this knowledge has been there for a long time. I think I said 60 years in the book, didn't I? It goes back to this guy. I figured out the pronunciation. I've been told the pronunciation since our last conversation about this. Albert Szent-Györgyi.
Györgyi.
He was a Hungarian scientist working before and after the war. And he remarked in one of his books that there were papers to show that almost any liquid, or at least a wide range of liquids, put them in contact with a surface of a particular, well, in case of water, it has to be a hydrophilic surface, which means it has to have a charge, it has to have some ability to interact with the water, and then it can change the water and give it a bit of structure. You don't need much charge, and actually a positive charge will work as well as, well, it will work also, but it is a negative charge, and that's possibly because that's how the body works. That's how life generally works. So you get a bit of charge on the surface there, the solid surface, that causes a change in the water interacting with it, next to it there, which makes it into a more structured water. It's kind of a hexagonal shape. And that just happens. It happens with hundreds of different liquids and so forth. It'll always happen with water. And because inside the body, it's all surfaces everywhere. A protein molecule is plenty big enough to have a surface covered with structured water, and something like collagen, which is made like rope is made, a spiral of this, and then made into a bigger spiral and so forth. Plenty of room there for structured water. So it's figured that we're all about 70% structured water. There's plenty of opportunity for that to happen. Then Once you've made that on the surface, that begins to have a particular effect, which is that protons get excluded from this hexagonal shape, hexagonal layer. And that means that you've got a negative charge there in the structured water. It's slight, but then light can come along and build more and more and more layers. And Gerald Pollack, one of his colleagues, discovered it because he left the light on the bench, shining on this water experiment. Came back and it's grown. All the structured water has grown. And we switch the light off, it gradually disappears.
So it builds the water and charges the water.
Yeah, well, the actual building of the water charges the water, yes.
Just the function of it being created is kicking out those protons.
Yeah.
And creating a negative charge.
Yeah.
And so we're, like, I've heard the metaphor that we're sort of like a giant battery. If we think of ourselves as a battery being charged by sunlight and particularly infrared light.
Yeah, but actually the building of structured water is doing two things. Number one is creating charge there, which effectively means, electrons. And it's similar to the effect you get from earthing, grounding, or whatever. Number two, it's enabling those electrons to flow. I called it the electron superhighway.
Right.
And in fact, I'll be honest, it's getting beyond my understanding of this stuff. I know
it goes so deep. And I'm trying to keep it for people to, just understand well enough to really be motivated and excited.
Yeah.
To implement it. But at the same time, the quantum layers are so fascinating, and we're going to get into some of the really new ideas about structured water. It's incredible to me too, because mainstream allopathic medicine doesn't even recognize the existence of structured water in many cases. No. And yet, without that piece, it seems a little bit impossible to really be understanding what's going on with someone's biology.
Okay, so an ordinary crystal is a regular structure that repeats and repeats in space. Right?
Right.
So it's the same sort of molecular structure going all the way. And you can, of course, think of structured water as being like that. But a time crystal is something that has a regular repetition in space and in time. And it turns out, right, the name of the book is Coherent Health. And this is what is all about, really. I mean, coherence means a number of things. It means, in a sentence, it means that all the elements in the sentence work together to deliver your meaning. And coherent health means that all the elements of your body, including the structured water and so forth, are working together to keep you healthy and functioning. And May One Ho put it that under the influence of electromagnetic fields, the water can form into a coherent domain that resonates. Basically, coherence in that sense is basically like resonance, and that's the quantum thing as well, of course, because the trick of running your finger around a wine glass, you get the right frequency and it'll shatter it, right? It's the frequency that matters there. That's the quantum, the thing like that, and you don't make it work by being stronger or whatever. You just need enough of the right frequency, vibration to do that. And so that's another aspect of coherence, and it is all basically the same, really. So May One Ho said that these can become coherent domains that, under the influence of the magnetic field, end up trapping or holding the magnetic field, and then they can transmit it. So you need structured water, it turns out, to start building these coherent domains, little spaces, whatever. And the smallest one that we can figure out is just a few nanometers across. I reckon it, something like 300 molecules of water in that. But then from that basic structure, I think of it as like little coins or something like that. But they can build up and they start to form a spiral, presumably because the hexagon, there's an effect there, right? So it then ends up looking like a DNA double helix. Then that can form even greater structures so that you have enormous structure. And if you regard this structure as being information, then storing the electromagnetic field is providing the information. The structured water and the other water contained in there, because it doesn't have to be all structured water, holds on to it and then can, under certain circumstances, transmit it again. And because you can make these vast, great structures out of it, in molecular terms vast, the amount of information is, it's got to be infinite, really. There's no limit to this.
Whew. So the time crystals within our structured water, according to this very well-researched theory, posit that we could be holding unlimited information in our field.
Yes.
And transmitting it.
Yes.
And receiving it from other fields.
Correct. All of the above. One of the ways we got into this was, Luc Montagnier, who was one of the first reporters, describers of HIV. He did an experiment where he got a DNA fragment and put it into like a sort of a solenoid, a battery structure there, kept it completely apart from another similar thing, which had, so you've got a fragment of DNA in this, which we'll call the transmitting test tube. And then in the other test tube, the receiving test tube, you've got all the elements necessary to make that fragment of DNA again. Then you put that in a repeating field, which would something like the Schumann resonance, which is going around the world the whole time and has very high penetration. So it's going right through us all the time. There's nothing you can do about that. You can't stop it. And God knows what the consequences would be if you did. So that's kind of like a carrier wave. And what he did was to send the information from the transmitting test tube to the receiving test tube, and recorded that the DNA was spontaneously constructed in the receiving one. So that's a clear example of this kind of phenomenon happening, of a time crystal sending its information to another place electromagnetically and building a new time crystal there, or new time crystals. All right. And when you think that biophotons, or as we now call them, ultra-weak photon emissions, are happening all the time, all of your cells are popping them out the whole damn time, right? And human ones range the ultraviolet into the right through into the infrared, with something where there's a bit of a spike in yellow. I'm not sure why that is, but what else is it doing? I mean, if it's got a point, this has to be it, the biophotons. And the way we started understanding about biophotons was this guy called Gurvich back in the 30s, I think, behind the Iron Curtain there. He put an onion shoot, kind of thing. I think it was like a sprout when you sprout your salad, in one test tube and another one in there, and noted that in the right circumstances, there was an effect of having that test tube there, a sprouting active one there would cause another one there, which hadn't been activated or whatever, to start doing stuff. And he figured out in that one that you had to have quartz there instead of glass between them.
Okay, so we have established that structured water is essential to life, and it creates the electron, it supports the electron superhighway that keeps our bodies functioning and filled with energy and charged up. And we've established that mainstream medicine doesn't currently acknowledge that it exists, which is a major problem for that industry, I would say. And so now I want to get into something. So it's like in our world, not only, in the world that you're describing, not only have we established that structured water exists, we're starting to find suggestions of even deeper mysteries and beyond the healthy functioning of our biology, which is something called time crystals that I think you were, comes very strongly from the work of May Wenho. So Dr. Downing, pick it up from there. What's a time crystal? Just one that was not activated, had not been sprouted, and it was sprouting it just from receiving the energy of the one that was activated.
Correct. Yeah.
But glass cut it off, quartz didn't.
Because in that case, he thought then that it is all ultraviolet. And the quartz will transmit the ultraviolet and ordinary glass won't. But it turns out it's not. It's nothing like that simple. Well, it's as complicated as
it's complicated as a time
you
crystal.
can make it. Yeah.
So what does this mean, particularly for things that we have tended to dismiss, like telepathy or intuition? Or because I will say, being around a lot of people who have systematically added sunlight and grounding and darkness into their lives, I hear a lot of stories of people, whether they articulate it as enhanced intuition or they just are starting to have better ideas and make better choices and all this kind of thing. What are the implications of this time crystal for this kind of non-local phenomenon?
But I've always been quite a skeptic. I'll sort of get a new treatment and I'll let somebody else experiment on their patients before I experiment on mine or whatever. So I've always, said that things like homeopathy, for instance, they've got a hard road to follow. But because of Benveniste studies way back that talked about the memory of water, or water memory, for me personally anyway, there's a oh my God moment. This could be it. This could be how all this stuff works, as you guys describe it, all the woo-woo stuff. And add to your list of things, of paranormal phenomena, add faith, right? They say faith moves mountains, and this is how I do it. Faith is a form of coherence. You get this stuff working together, we've all seen things about that, we desperately needed a whatever, and so we prayed for it and it happened. And that proves that, prayer works. Well, I think it does prove that prayer works. And prayer is just another form of acting in coherence. It doesn't necessarily prove that your God is the right one. That's a whole different story. Anyway, I think, personifying God is a bit stupid. It's a bit like the blind man and the elephant. I've got this bit, it's a tail,
Right. We've all got a different bit and think it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So As a lifelong skeptic, now that you have, for this book, researched structured water and then researched the coherence within structured water, which we're calling a time crystal, through the work of May Wen Ho, what I'm hearing you say is that you feel confident that we have a mechanism of action to describe prayer, telepathy, intuition, meditation.
I'm definitely a follower of the Reverend Bayes, so I'd say the probabilities have shifted substantially now. And am I confident? I don't know, I'm getting there, yes.
The needle has moved.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like, you remember the image of Earth from space, with Apollo, whichever one it was, 1968. We thought, oh my God, it really is a small blue planet, and there is no planet B, despite Elon Musk and all their aspirations. I think seeing the images of these little crystals, or whatever you're going to call them, these coherent domains, it's a real thing.
What would be sort of in your greatest vision of, going forward from here, now that we have this theory, but also the imaging, as you said, like we can actually see these coherent domains in some level? What is your sort of highest destiny for us with this information?
Okay, well, let's start with the dark side of it, because
Okay.
if all of our body, pretty much, is capable of responding to electromagnetic energy, such as biophotons and the natural one sunlight, then it's also capable of responding to the non-native EMFs that we're pumping out in ever-increasing quantities now. So there's a priority there. We do need to tidy things up, or do some housekeeping. And bear in mind that John Ott described this malillumination phenomenon back in, 20-something years before the mobile phone was even invented. There were adverse effects from TV, from those cordless phones, and from the fluorescent lights. And he got effects from tidying that stuff up. It's got to be 1 billion times worse now, because there's so much more bad energy, if you like, around in the radio frequency part of the spectrum where Wi-Fi and mobiles and so forth live. And so we have got to do something about that for ourselves individually, and ideally for the world too. But the good news about that, of course, is that you don't have to make it perfect, right? Now, people who try to apply this to patients' health and so forth, their first rule is that you should detoxify your sleeping area, right? So no mobiles and no radio wave type stuff in the bedroom, absolutely. That does help. And in fact, Trevor Marshall works in the autoimmune sector of things, did that experiment with putting hoods on that are screening out electromagnetic waves. And so he got about 60, I think, patients with autoimmune diseases, and he got them to wear these hoods, which will screen out some, by no means all, but some of the electromagnetic fields reaching you. We're screening them, keep them away from your brain. And he asked them to wear that for 4 hours waking and 4 hours sleeping. So that's a third of the day, right? And he got effects. He got definite changes in their symptoms, for which they were already on medication, but he got a further improvement. Although Anybody who's worked with EMFs and electrosensitivity and so forth will understand this. There wasn't always good effects. But that, you get surprising things with that. I've seen people who've been electrosensitive, covered themselves in Faraday cage type wire fabric and get much worse inside that. It's unpredictable because, well, I suppose the time crystal theory sort of provides an explanation for that. Just because it's so complex, you can't easily predict what is going to happen. But you can apply the basic rule, I think, that if it's natural, if we evolved in it for billions of years, then it's got to be good. And if it's non-natural, then it's probably bad. Or at least it's capable of being bad.
Right. Yeah, that would be the flip side of it. If we're so exquisitely attuned to all of these frequencies, then when we're bombarded with unhealthy frequencies, that is absolutely going to have an effect.
Yeah.
That would make sense. However, the good news is once we know that, we can choose.
Yes, exactly. You can do something about it and have to do it for yourself, really, to begin with.
And so if you could just sort of summarize where you are now after having done all of this research sort of through the quantum realm, through the coherence, through Mei Wen Ho and all of your clinical experience over the years, your work publishing the journal, like sort of where are we? It feels like, I talk to lots of people all the time, and honestly, I feel like we're in a brand new paradigm every month.
It really sounds as if my work is done here.
No, I want to know where you think we are right now, like what direction we're headed in.
Well, we can see that things are getting worse. We can also see that it takes time for us to get this stuff into our heads, really. On average, about 50 years. We know we've got to keep on at this, but there is some hope. I think this stuff has kind of arrived just in time as things get, really bad, unless 3i Atlas up there actually is carrying some benevolent aliens. We're going to have to do it for ourselves. You never know.
I love it. Well, that is a perfect place to end. I think you might have that. Maybe that's the answer. 3i Atlas will explain all and lead us forward into the new era.
The new era, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Downing, thank you for coming back to the podcast. Thank you for this incredible book, Coherent Health. It will be available soon. We will let you know how to order it and put links in the show notes. And just so appreciate you diving into all of this and coming out with a coherent articulation so we can all wrap our heads around it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, I assure you.
This has been the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. To find a practitioner who practices from this point of view, visit our directory at quantumbiologycollective.org. If you are a practitioner, definitely take a look at the Applied Quantum Biology Certification, a 6-week study of the science of the new human health paradigm and its practical application with your patients and clients. We also love to feature graduates of the program on this very podcast. Until next time, the QBC.